Hello and welcome
to the High Noon Couples podcast,
where we empower blessed couples
to deepen the love, fostering mutual pleasure, connection, and joy.
So let's dive in. Welcome back to the High Noon Couples podcast. Today we are excited to introduce Stephen Stacey from the UK.
Stephen has been blessed for 44 years to his dynamic wife from Poland, Barbara, and together they've raised 4 kids. He's also taught marriage courses at a university in Finland, focusing on teamwork, personal growth, and marriage.
In this episode, we talk about his new resource, the 7 Principles of Creation Marriage Enrichment Workbook. It's a powerful tool to help couples grow stronger in every area of their relationship.
So let's dive into the conversation with Stephen.
Enjoy! Hello, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming on this High Noon Couples podcast. Yeah, and talking about your workbook you have created, the 7 Principles of Creation Marriage Enrichment Workbook. Yes, we have also one. And so, yeah, we would love to hear how it came to be that you wrote the book. What was your inspiration and what is your personal journey behind creating this workbook?
Hello everyone. Hi, welcome to sunny England. I'm Stephen. And thank you so much, High Noon, for inviting me today to talk on your podcast. And I really hope I can share something useful for you today. So let's dive in. How did I come to write this book? In 2006, I was teaching at a university in Finland. And I decided, because I was teaching on personal development, I wanted to offer the university a course on couple relationships and improving couple relationships too. So I went out and I bought all the books I could at that time and read them all. And I do what I do, which is like synthesize the thoughts and try to create my own viewpoint on it. And then I published my book. And I started using that as a course book. And then one day, in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, a revelation just occurred to me. A voice came to me very strongly, woke me up and said, everything you've written in your book is in the principle of creation. And I was incredibly surprised by this thought. And so I went and took my book and rearranged the chapters, and there, to my surprise, was the outline of the principle of creation. And I was incredibly shocked by this, because up until that point, I had only seen the principle as kind of the 3 blessings worldview and growing to be a good person and trying to build a good marriage. And so in other words, a guide for my life rather than a day-to-day instruction book on how I could use the principle to improve the quality of my marriage. So I started to realize some very important things at that point. I firstly realized the world is talking about the principle of creation, and because the principle of creation talks about the principles upon which the universe is built, and they're honest principles, then of course the world is trying to understand how to use them. And so the marriage educators were basically saying, the first wave marriage educators were basically saying, do any part of the principle of creation better and your marriage will improve and you'll have more likely to have a successful marriage. And that shocked me. And it wasn't only the marriage educators, because I taught in a business school, the business development, the team side of it, were definitely saying the same things, very similar things. So starting to realize, the world is talking about that these principles are real. They are built into the universe, and the humans are trying to utilize them for best effectiveness. And then as time went on, I said, if the principle is trying to talk about the second blessing, how we can work better as a team, it must also somehow be talking about the first blessing too. How do I become a fruitful individual by myself and within marriage? And think qualities like, how can I be appreciative of my wife and grateful for her what she gives into the relationship, or how can I learn the art of forgiveness, or playfulness in my marriage. And that was what I started to find books on what we call first blessing, what I would call first blessing, marriage enrichment. And then, of course, eventually came books on restoration, on how to help couples talk about their traumas, share their traumas, where they got them from, so they could have more empathy for each other and realize that this trauma is something that they've inherited, and it's not them trying to be spiteful or nasty, but somehow they've inherited it and they're trying to work it out. So marriage education went basically through aspects of the principle, whether it be the first blessing, second blessing, or restoration. I was very inspired by this, and I started to realize, the principles, the 7 principles of creation is a goal-setting tool. It's like a tool which, when we are going to achieve a long-term goal or an important goal for our life, then we use these principles within the principle of creation to achieve that goal. And the better we use those principles, the more effective we will be in achieving our goals. And they're in the right order, the principles which are shockingly in the right order. And we use them every day when we're trying to achieve something important in our lives. And all this was like mind-blowing to me, and I hope to convey some of those ideas to you today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds so nice that you have been working with this for so long, and then you knowing the principles as well, and then realizing actually it's all the same basically.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it, and we just don't know it. We
Right,
just don't.
right. That people outside, like outside our movement or outside our belief, let's say, actually really do understand it, but don't have the connection to.
Like, this is built into the universe. It's like gravity. The principles in the principle of creation are the fundamental principles which define the context for human existence. How do we say, I'm going to adapt my life? Well, I'm trying to be a good person and grow up to be fruitful, and I'm trying to build this multiply and blessings, and that's channeling, God's nature in many ways. But it's much more than that, because as I said, the 7 principles is like, this is how God actually creates. This is how he goes about creating things. And if I want to be God's child, this is how I do it.
Right. So what does the title of the 7 principles of creation refers to, or how does these principles are connected to marriage?
Yes, let's do that. So here we have the outline of the principle of creation. There are 7 key principles that run through the principle of creation, and together they form what we might call a goal-setting tool, or a project guidance tool, how you achieve the goals in your life. And marriage can be seen as one of the many projects or important goals you're trying to fulfill. So here we go. So first thing you do is, when you have a goal, is to try to think about the end goal. What is the kind of marriage we would like to create together? So we have this principle of mind and body unity. We have in our mind a clear goal, and we drag our body in that direction, hopefully. And as a couple, ideally, you discuss what kind of marriage you would like to create, because if you don't, then you might be pulling in different directions, and that doesn't help you or anybody else. So we have in the workbook some worksheet to help you discuss what you would like, what kind of marriage you would like. The second principle, of course, is the principle of dual characteristics, which we, for the wider use of this goal-setting tool, we call the principle of diverse contributions, and who and what resources can help me achieve this goal. So, of course, in marriage, my wife will help me achieve this, and books and counselors and my parents maybe, and different resources are available, and you can think about who can help you. And in the book, we go through the gender differences, Mars and Venus, which you can discuss. Do these apply in our marriage? And so you can understand each other better. Typically, for example, the wives are more emotional than the male, and the males struggle to understand that emotion sometimes. But it's just a natural part of being a woman. It's the way she's designed, the drugs, and the way her brain is set up, and she's right. It's important she has more emotions, so that she is able to be more alert to problems in life and to challenges ahead, especially for children, and let the male understand that these things are important. So you can the gender differences, and also we have a section on the cultural differences to understand. So the cultural differences that you might experience in your marriage, especially if you marry someone from another part of the world. So my son and his fiance found that particularly helpful. She's from the Philippines, and they could go through it and really discuss their values and really come up with a better understanding of each other. The third principle, of course, is the principle of give and take action. The give and take action when it's done right and healthily, it generates positive energy, existence, multiplication, and action. And what that means is the communication in a couple relationship is extremely important, the quality of that, and what you talk about. And there are certain things which have to be talked about: finances and roles around the home, and children and relatives, and how you go on holiday and relax and have leisure, and all these topics need to be discussed. And if it can be discussed in a healthy way, then you'll generate much more energy and come to some agreement. Then happy days. So in the book, we have a range of different communication strategies offered. You've got cards to help you discuss and listen to each other, or we have a template for you to negotiate a settlement, or we have some other aspects of education about how you might enter into communication, a discussion in a way that brings about successful results. Or we also have some section on how do you reduce an argument once it's started, and there's all kinds of things there because the communication is important. And then we have a load of discussion worksheets which you can choose from to talk about these key things that build a marriage, that are an essential part of a marriage. The next thing is love and beauty, and we all want love, and we all want something joyous, and that's the point of marriage. We want something beautiful and enjoyable, and what kind of traditions do we have, and are we dated? Do we date, and do we romance, and have a common hobby, and all these qualities which are so important to bringing God, to feeling like God is coming down into our marriage. So there's worksheets on this and other these kind of topics as well. Then there's the principle of harmony, being the center of harmony, and that basically means somehow to learn how to respect each other. And what does it mean to be respectful to each other? Like what kind of computer use, or staying away from pornography, or all kinds of other things which can show disrespect to your partner. The next section is on growth, and in other words, for any project to succeed, you probably are going to have to learn some new things, and so that you can be successful. And that's the way. So we have a list of books on different topics that you can go and read to help you improve your ability to improve your level of fruitfulness. And lastly is the principle of vitality elements. And vitality elements basically means a feedback system, and I get positive energy from doing something right, and hopefully my spouse gives me praise and tells me what I'm doing right, and how we might give room for growth feedback, and how that might be appropriate in marriage. And so there we are. We have a goal setting tool that is which covers the principle of creation, and we can relate to, we can understand. And as I said, these principles are built into the universe. You can use this if you take this to work, you can use the same principles in your team, and you can ask, do we have a clear goal? You can ask, do we have the right people in our team? You can ask, are our communication structures good, and have we sorted out the baby steps so we can achieve our goal? Do we have beauty in our product? or services. What does it mean to bring goodness and beauty and truth into the work we do, so that it inspires our customer and us ourselves as well? Are we respecting the key stakeholders? Who are they? What do we have to learn? And what kind of feedback loop from our customers or from each other will help us keep learning and keep developing? And so these are built into the universe, and many couples try to run away from them and not use them and just say, we're not going to talk. It is far better to talk, even if it's an argument. We're going to be tense. The marriages that drift apart are the ones that they don't talk about the difficulties, and it's so important. So the research shows that couples who argue to find solutions and couples who can do it quietly to have the same divorce rates. That's not the issue. Is not to argue or not argue. The point is to talk about these things, and so the book is designed to give you some education and to help you talk and learn about each other.
Is it what you said before, like with this, that the man often maybe he's kind of focused on one thing, and the woman kind of has sometimes maybe a more wider viewpoint? Thank you.
We can relate very
yes,
well.
very much. Sometimes I'm getting crazy with Sebastian when I feel like I see everything.
And you see things you don't actually physically see. You actually see them.
Yeah.
Like I would be walking out the door with children in the middle of winter with no coat on, and my wife would be in the bedroom hearing us go out, and she says, "Have you got your coats on?" Also, you worry about the future, and it's all invented future. It might be, it might not be, but you do worry about it more than us men. So it comes out, and that's natural. It's okay.
Wow. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. And I think it's so motivating that you've brought the principle into like universities, right?
Yeah, also like brought it into a workbook where couples can work through that and know, okay, this is connected with the principle. It's nothing new. It is actually something familiar. When you're blessed couple, you're familiar with the principle, and then it's kind of translated maybe in a way that feels spiritually connected with our faith, but also something that's universal.
We're just on the topic of we have those universal principles where even though we try to avoid them, we always come back because we know it's the truth. We know that's life. We know how God designed it. And there's so many other help books out there for married couples. And we were wondering maybe if you could distinguish what makes your workbook different, maybe for couples from our faith, more valuable than a Christian-based workbook or just a generic workbook?
That's a good question. I think the main difference is the fact that the book tries to connect you with the 7 principles of creation. The 7 principles of creation is the way God creates. And we know that because it is the way human beings create. And it doesn't matter whether we're trying to create, whether in a business or in a marriage or just trying to get a university degree. We use these same principles all the time in diverse situations. And that is really a useful understanding to have, because we're trying to be temples of God. We're trying to be God's children, and to do so, we're going to have to channel those qualities that God embraces, and God are within God. And knowing these principles already gives us a really good start. It's not just, oh, you should communicate better or discuss finances or something like that, there are many good books which can really help you do those things. The key thing here is the knowledge that these things are essential for your marriage if you really, if you want a good marriage. Now, as I said, some couples just manage to get along harmoniously without much discussion on certain topics. But if you're struggling on some topic, then you can look at these 7. Oh, this one seems to be important to us, and we don't know how to do it. But it's essential for our marriage that we sort this out. Now, either you can go off and you can get a counselor and sit down with them and try and work it out, or you can use this book. But the knowledge that these principles are essential part of building something which we can, so our blessing feels like a blessing, is really It's really advanced knowledge. It's really helpful. And that gives us a head start because we're clear, we have clarity in our lives, and with that clarity we can say, okay, the principle says we need love and beauty in our marriage. It doesn't seem to be present right now. We're overworking, we're working too hard, we're not, and that's it, but that's an important part. Or we haven't understood the gender differences, but the principle says, dual characteristics, and then it's not, God is not one male or female, but somehow to learn the differences between the two is important. And the more you learn, the more you're able to handle those differences within a marriage and succeed in achieving your goals. So that's the difference. The difference is the clarity that these things are important.
Right. Yeah. This can really help because often from the first generation as well as the second generation, less couples or third generation now, we often didn't know how to deal with certain situations or ask the right questions. And when there is a workbook that helps like to ignite with different questions a conversation and then realizing, okay, this is what maybe a belief system is about this topic, or there's a certain trigger, or I've never understood my partner's perspective, or we just never have talked about it because it never came up, but now it comes up and there's so much emotions or unclarity or conflict or not knowing, okay, how do we deal with that? And the workbook then with the questions specific in different areas are able to actually reflect. And then maybe it's not the way I thought it is. Maybe it's a bit different, or creating a new perspective by talking about it. So that's really nice. One thing you have mentioned already before, like with education, but also in enrichment work, as well as a bit of trauma, what all these trauma work, education or enrichment work for a couple, how does that differ?
That's a very good question. Yes, there's three, as it says in the principle, there are three kinds of parts of ourselves. Yeah, there's the first blessing, then there's the second blessing, the part of ourselves that reaches out to others, and then there's the restoration, the trauma part of ourselves. So the principle is clear about all. If you look at it, it's very clear about all three of these, which is helpful. So when it comes to the restoration part, we're dealing with fallen natures, natures which are not how God expresses himself or herself. And the principle is clear that we as human beings, we have three types of sin: collective, individual, and inherited. And then there's and so that translates into three types of trauma that might affect us and bring out arcane nature. So we have things we've received from the past. A lot of us are still affected by the wars. We lost grandparents, or we have fear, or there's all kinds of things going on, or maybe our parents had infidelity issues, and that might manifest itself, like, for example, when your husband goes out and he's not back on time, you might imply, because you saw it in your parents, oh, he's having an affair. And as soon as he gets home, even if it's 15 minutes late, you're already your fear is like screaming and saying, and you find it hard to sit down and have a conversation, and it's very painful. Or a lot of people grew up in poverty, and that means that whenever there's financial worries, they can't sit down and discuss it, and it so all these different things. Or you were sexually abused as a child, and you go frigid when there's any kind of physical touch or attempt to create intimacy, and all these things can impact on us. But these are, we can see that the principle says we all have an able nature and a Cain nature, and our job is to understand our Cain and to understand where those Cain things maybe came from. And there's books, marriage education books, like Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson, which is a wonderful book where couples can sit down and try to really talk and listen to each other about where these possible traumas came from. So yes, so my wife and I, we went to many counseling sessions with family constellation work, and we had a very deep experience uncovering our past and learning about our ancestors, the traumas that are, and emotions, the trapped emotions that are stuck within our family systems. And it was really useful for me to understand Barbara and her her situation as she was growing up. I got a clear picture of that, and I could understand her situation. She could understand something about me, and we could have more compassion to each other, and also deal with those issues more easily when they come up, because I can just say, oh, that's not her, that came from grandma. And she can look at me and say, oh, that came from dad, his father, and things like this. And you can externalize the blame, which really helps. And then, of course, you've got your personal growth, your ability to be playful in marriage and nurturing, and have your core values and all those things. You have to, that's first blessing stuff, and the ability to develop your ability to be grateful, and develop the art of forgiveness, and things like that. So that's all those things you're going on, and you to work on them. But the third thing, of course, is working together as a team, and bringing that together. And of course, the traumas can impact on your ability to work together as a team. You might have emotions about finances, as I said. You're trying to discuss finances, and fear comes up, or anger about past events, or different things, and then that makes it really, complicates the ability to talk to each other. But technically, you can't fall the seven principles of creation. You can't fall them. You can misuse them. You can have a different sense of beauty, or you bring in lies instead of truth. And you can, so Hitler could use the seven principles, for example, or Satan can use the seven principles to build something evil. But you can't technically fall them, but the fall can impact, the fallen natures can impact on them and your ability to live them out. So some couples find it very hard to be team players, for example, responsible, and that probably has roots in a trauma or something like this. So the general rule is that if you find it hard to find it, sit down and discuss and work it out, there's probably a trauma buried there somewhere which needs to be uncovered. And then it's our job to develop our own able, so that we can have compassion on our own Cain, and to realize, oh, there you are again, Cain, my Cain nature, my fallen nature. I'm being lazy, or I just want to play computer games, or instead of being helpful. And I see you, and so being aware of your Cain and your fallen nature is helpful. But I'm not going to. But you're part of wonderful me, and I see that, but I'm not going to let you. It's not going to be helpful if I get on that path. So, as God said to Cain, if you go that way, evil might get you.
Thank you for explaining all the differences, because I definitely see in our relationship that I'm really grateful for is that we have, before even coming to know each other, we have worked on our personal traumas and our pain in the past of growing up, or also what we inherited from our parents, starting also to learning to communicate in a different way. And like similar to, like in your couple, is that he's in his family, they're more quiet and not really fighting. And in my family, my parents screaming and throwing things through the room. I never wanted to have this kind of relationship where, where you have to scream at each other or having to throw things through the room, or, and so I'm really grateful that we have done this kind of personal work beforehand, but it was then really a challenge to, from individually coming together as a team, not to forget that we are a team, but still individuals, and coming together and still being in a marriage, being in a partnership, in a teamwork, and still to remember, okay, there's still maybe some trauma I need to work on. There's still some personal work I have to do, but then coming together as a couple back and have a better teamwork, and being able to talk with each other in a different way where maybe not necessarily immediately hurt each other. Okay, let me communicate this in a different way that you may be able to understand what I'm trying to say. Like with safe conversation, we have just recently did a course for 2 hours, and that was really helpful, because we felt that, oh yeah, this is something is kind of missing, this of a way of communication where we both feel understood, and where there's not certain information is missing. So I have experienced that in some couples, that one of the couple really feels like stuck and sees, oh, there is something we need to work on as a couple, but the other one is not really wanting to, or doesn't see the necessity. So how can the workbook help the person who wants to move forward and to encourage the other person who maybe doesn't see it so much?
Yeah, that's a very common problem. Yes, one doesn't want to grow or as much as the other person. But it's not the end of the world. There's lots of things you can do to grow yourself and your partner. If you do those things, your partner has a higher chance of responding in a positive way and growing themselves. It's rather like we see that in, say, for example, if you become a better manager at work, your employees will sense that change and they will respond. They're more likely to respond. And it's the same with parenting. If you develop your parenting skills, your children are more likely to respond positively. And it's the same thing in marriage. It's not, but many of us just seem to think, oh, if my partner changes, our marriage would be much better. But marriage is all about growth, and if you grow, your partner is just more likely to grow, and it's just the way it works. What can you do? There's lots of things. You can improve the way you start your discussions. You can give more praise. You can see more of your partner's potential. And just in seeing that potential and somehow resonating that you believe in them, they are more likely to somehow possibly connect to their own potential. That's the way it works with children in general, you might say, or employees. You can improve your own core values, or you can improve the way you sit down and negotiate something, like sit down and with a piece of paper and let's try and figure this out together. You can improve the way you more playful and just more affectionate, and that your partner might respond to that over time. And there's all kinds of things you can personally do. We talked about if you can go and get help with your own traumas, then your partner might respond to that too, because maybe your traumas are stimulating his or her traumas. So there's an awful lot you can do before you even start thinking, my partner doesn't want to change. I think it's very important to see the potential in your partner, to see it and say, there's stuff here which I have and my partner doesn't, and they have goodness I don't have, and maybe I can learn from them. And how can I have a belief that over time they can learn something from me, and if I practice my own skills well, my own heart well, over time they might inherit it. So some people find, for example, that their partner is not very romantic as a person, and you might be romantic and in your being, and over time you gently bring that out in your partner, or they there's all kinds of things you can do and you can influence each other by being positive role models, and that's the by being your able. And somehow that works, hopefully, for many couples, and that it has worked in my marriage and in many ways, and many other couples find that but it consistently involves you appreciating your partner and having hope in your relationship, and realizing it's one step at a time, and maybe a little step. You might have a 40-day goal to sort out one issue, for example, or bring it to a higher level. And you might go and study and watch some YouTube videos. You can even ask Rock these days for help, and you get all kinds of help. And there's hundreds of books out there which you can appeal to, so that I grow myself and as I develop myself. So my wife has a list of things to do, often hundreds of things she would like me to do, and I tell her it's too much. And I have my own things. So when she asks me to do something, I have to figure out where in my schedule of many things it might be put and how important it is. And there are lots of good ways she can get me to put that schedule higher. for example, by putting a piece of paper on my laptop screen and just saying these things, these 2 or 3 things are very important, and I'd like, if I appreciate it, if they can be done by this date. And I respond to that better than her just speaking to me over breakfast, amongst many other things. And so when I want a break, I say, oh, maybe I can go and fix that cupboard, or make that phone call, or etc. And I will respond to that. And there's lots of ways she can change, which will bring out better outcomes from me.
I like to listen to audiobooks because I'm dyslexic, so it's for me really difficult. I mean, I can do still read, but it's for me it's really difficult to keep my concentration for a longer time when it's about reading. So, but yeah, I can definitely see that you cannot change anybody. You have to change yourself, or you have to work on yourself, because you have the expectation that someone else's changes over time. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's he gonna change, or kind of.
Oh,
What happened to the book since you published it?
yes, what happened? I published it last December for the Blessed Family meeting in Italy. But I rush published it, and I got feedback, and I added some extra chapters, and I also added some sections on using the book in a community setting. So it kind of got delayed, and other things happened along the way. But finally, just recently, we published the full book, and it's ready to go. And now I'm talking with Blessed Family Department in England, and think about how we can offer training to use the book for mentors who want to help couples, so they can offer it in their community. And couples can come to them, and the mentor can sit there and help the couple talk out issues using the book as a framework. There's also a possibility, if people understand the book and how to use the book, they can invite other couples to their house, and they all have a copy of the book, and they have some discussion time discussing some of the educational points, or doing some of the quizzes. And then they have 20 to 30 minutes in private conversations as couples. So you're in a safe environment where you're more likely to behave yourself, where you're talking, and hopefully you can talk it out. And over a series of several weeks, hopefully the couples raise themselves to a whole new level of competence and love. So there's lots of different things we're trying to do with the book. And then also the idea that, because I understand marriage education, and many in the Blessed Family Department don't know so much about marriage education, I would offer some marriage education courses to explain what marriage education is about, and what it might do. Yeah, up until now, though, we've had success using individual worksheets from the book in various situations. For example, preparing for blessing, they could take out some of the quizzes, some of the worksheets. One of the worksheets is like, what's my faith language? How do I express my faith in my life? And because a lot of couples find it hard to relate, understand each other's faith language, and really kind of understand how they're trying to express their faith in their daily lives. And that's to help them talk about that. So that's helpful for the young unblessed couples. And there are other worksheets there which have proved helpful. So I can see that being useful in a variety of workshop settings as well.
Stephen, do you recommend couples to work through the book like within half a year, like every day?
No.
How do you intend it to be?
That's an interesting question, but I think no is the answer. The start of the book is a quiz, which helps you go through different parts of the seven principles of creation and how they apply to your marriage. And you can look at those different principles, and you can mark off the ones you think you're doing quite well and the ones you could do better with. And that would be really helpful, just to do an analysis of how you're applying the various principles to your marriage. You can also do some of the quizzes together, and that might be helpful if you feel like that's weak. And there's some education points, for example, learning gender differences and discussing them, and just give you some kind of context to understand each other better. And that's helpful. Then if you feel like there's something you really need to talk about, there's lots of discussion points, and you can spend an evening, quiet time, choose a few of the questions from one of the discussion sheets, and just go through them And if you find it hard to do it without the emotions getting roused, as I said, there are various communication activities, communication tools that will help you improve your communication if you stick with them. And maybe you can work out one or two issues. Also, you can be proactive. For example, if you're thinking of having children or you get pregnant, you can sit down and do the parenting discussion worksheet and discuss what it's going to be like when you raise your child. Build up a knowledge base of what kind of future you will have as parents, and that it's easier to do that before the child arrives than after. So there's all kinds of ways to use the book, and hopefully couples will put it on the shelf, and if they find out they're struggling in some area, they will, 2 years later, pick it up and say, let's see if this can help us. It's a resource book throughout marriage. So those are some of the ways I hope couples will use it.
I really enjoyed how you said, or at least how I received it, was that with the principle of creation, with the workbook, and how the principle of creation is seen everywhere in society. It's the same for us as blessed families. We do have the principles. We have the principle of creation. We have a deeper understanding of certain things, how they work, but there's still the 5% we do have to fulfill. And without that, it's not going to work. And I can really see in our marriage, in our relationship, that as long as we both really take responsibility for the action we do or don't do or whatever, then we are able to move forward and creating a great relationship where I feel like also Heavenly Parent wants to be, and where we are able to invite Heavenly Parent, and not something where actually it's not working great, so where's Heavenly Parent, where's God? But yeah, it's my responsibility, it's my 5% on taking what we have and learn from that. And it's really great to have this workbook you created, because it is connected to the principle. It is because sometimes hearing in SDF or in workshops about the principles, and then sometimes it's difficult to finding a way, okay, how do I use that now in my daily life? How do I practice that? And sometimes this mind-body unity, it feels so out of range. It's so difficult to get up at 4 a.m. in the morning and or then not to take the chocolate or have this unity and then feeling, oh yeah, I'm never getting there anyways. It feels that this book a practical way to go in the different ways of the principle of creation, and then being able to take responsibility.
I think that's a very important point you make there. It's our responsibility. The kingdom of heaven is not going to come through fallen people, and each one of us have a responsibility to grow, and personal growth can happen in any place at any time, and our marriage is created as a vehicle for growth. You cannot escape, you cannot hide yourself. All your fallen natures will be shown and your weaknesses be shown, and it's your job to figure out, where do I have to grow so God can come down into my relationship? Where do I have to heal? And what do we have to discuss and work out so that God can come down into our home? Everybody's talking about the principle of creation in some way or another. They're living out some aspect of the principle of creation in their daily life. And some of us are better at it than others. And some of us really need to work on some things. But we all need to work on things. Like my whole marriage, my wife has been asking me to develop my ability to be protective, for example, and it comes back again and again. This issue of me not knowing how to be protective enough, and we suffer the consequences as a family. So how do we? The point of marriage is a path of growth. It is given to us by God as a path of growth, and to approach it as a path of growth, and to realize, oh, if I make a 40-day condition here to up my game in terms of gratitude, or up my ability to start conversations well, or to learn about the gender differences, and every 40 days you're improving your skills, then you yourself and your ability to function well as a wife or a husband or a parent will grow accordingly. But that's our job. And if you want Jung Il Guk, that's what we have to do. I mean, it's the same in business. It's the same. They have to work on the 7 principles. But the 7 principles creation is only like I want to say it's a goal-setting tool. It's like me stretching out into the world. But the internal world is another area which all of the society is talking about, or what is the template that we build a good society upon. And society is always discussing that. And and they're always discussing fundamentally the principle, because the principle is the ideal. And because it is the ideal, people are kind of like discussing issues around the ideal, and they're trying to figure out how to get there. So all kinds of things, like when it comes to social welfare, does social welfare work, or does it make people lazy, for example? And the principle answers that and says, well, if you want energy to come down, and give and take action has to take place. In other words, both have to give something to the relationship, and just giving people money will not generate energy for growth and personal development. So you have to think about that, training programs or helping people get into education, so that they or doing at least voluntary work to generate some kind of personal give and take action, so energy can come down. So welfare has always kind of like being discussed, because it doesn't seem to be working, and people have to think, how does the principle apply? And it's exactly the same when it comes to, for example, other political issues, transgenderism, which is an issue of whether you can neglect the body in mind and body unity, and does that if we neglect the body in the law and just say the mind is important, does that generate energy to create a positive society? And the principle says it's not possible. So everybody's talking about something in the principle, and it's our responsibility to understand the principle and try to channel it so that we can bring God into our families, into our marriages, and build a good society. And the hope is Unificationists can help others do it themselves, and also help others achieve the same ends. So if you can up your game, then you can also help other couples and say, oh, realize, the principle can help you too. And you can be more confident in sharing the principle. It's not just somehow a faith system, but a way of living and a way of being, a way of bringing God down.
I do.
I do. Okay.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much. It was so interesting on the different ways you talked about the 7 principle of creation and how it is applied everywhere where we look, and when we open the news or the television, or going to work or trying to work on our skills or whatever, they're everywhere. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. Yes, putting in the work and making that available for everyone.
Anyway, be strong. Go forward. Embrace the principle. I do.
Yes, we
Yeah.
will. Thank you so
Steven.
much.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.